Want to have live chats with me or just connect with other cricket fans on Discord that also enjoy my content? Or a few AMAs. Maybe you want early podcast episodes or ad-free content or want to receive my emailer. You can get all of this on our Patreon, plus a little bit of behind the scenes stuff as well. Huge thanks to everyone who has supported us on Patreon so far. You are all part of this channel's success. Name and job title, please.
Aditya Iyer, sports editor of Open Magazine. I also write human interest features and other funky stuff, including like the wildebeest migration in the Masai Mara. So it's not just cricket, but cricket is my focus right now on this podcast because I've written a book called Gully, Travels Around India During the 2023 World Cup, published by Penguin Random House. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about.
Why did you write the book?
I have been fascinated by the idea of cricket fandom in this country. What makes cricket anywhere in the world, right? Like you've been lucky enough to travel the world and write your stuff from absolutely everywhere. Can you imagine this sport, this most amazing sport born in England and played in about 15, 20 countries now without Indian fandom, right? Like it's just not the same. So, and oftentimes the fans in India, as you know, I mean, they can really divide a room, but they've not been given the credit for what they really bring to the table with respect to cricket. So I wanted to kind of like turn the lens towards them and see how they behave when the biggest prize in the sport, the 50-over World Cup, is hosted by the country that kind of, you know, holds the soul of this game. And they were also traveling the length and breadth of this country. And this country, as you know, is many, many different countries in one, just under the title, the banner of India. So what these different regions behave like while this amazing tournament kind of passes through like a circus, and how it kind of, at the end of the day, we're a very divided country, like most democracies are. And this is one of the very, very, very few unifying factors, this game, right? I mean, there's Bollywood, there's food, but they get a bit niche, they get a bit regional, not cricket. So I wanted to see how the fans react when a big tournament happens. I didn't know that this Indian team was going to play as well as it did. But that was a bonus to see how they react when something so amazing happens, and also something so heartbreaking with the loss to Australia, of course, in the final. But I wanted to see how it unifies us, how it divides us. It was basically an excuse for me to write about this country. That's what I really wanted to do. So it's just a way of telling the story of India, is what it is.
Indian fans, it's really interesting. So people often say, are Indian fans the most annoying? And I was like, no, the most annoying fans are generally, I find West Indian fans really hard to deal with, right? But there's like seven of them. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't matter. There just isn't the number that you get. And with India, you get a million great fans and a million terrible fans and a million casual fans and a million Kohli fans. And it's not the same kind of thing. And you know, I've had this real issue with the cricket boards of like the Cricket Australia and the ECB and BCCI kind of pretend like they're so well run and that's why cricket has been, and it's like, no, it's to do with marketplace and people, right? And when it comes to the reason that Indian cricket is the biggest in the world is because of Indian cricket fans. And that is the most important part of it. But I want to talk to you a little bit because your book's really interesting. It goes into a few different things. One of this, and I've been going through this in the last couple of days with Bayram, who's had trouble getting accreditation for the tournament. And I've had all sorts of trouble, especially since leaving Cricinfo, for getting accreditation. Yeah, you focus on this quite a bit of how to cover the World Cup and how accreditation works and what it's like not being one of the major newspapers or news outlets.
Yeah. So I've seen both ends of it, right? Like I was once with the big newspapers of two out of the three big ones. Started off with the Indian Express, where it was super easy to to get into all the big tournaments, including FIFA World Cups. Man, I covered Brazil when there were actually like people from reporters from and big reporters from Argentina who kind of had to sit out of the Maracana in the final, while I just walked in because they wanted representation from all over the world. And it also means we're bankrolled by these big guys, so we don't really have to worry about like tour expenses and where we stay and stuff like that. It all changes when you're not with, because we're talking cricket here, with one of the big newspapers or a cricket website, right? A hardcore cricket website. I work for a political weekly, which comes like way down the pecking order of importance. To occupy one of the seats in tiny little press boxes in the stadiums in India. So I also wanted to talk about how similar the journey of covering cricket and getting from stadium to stadium in this expanse of India is to actually, following the team as a fan. I mean, it's terribly difficult because of the distances or like the quick turnaround time. Like, there's in this World Cup, there was a match in two back-to-back India matches in two tier 2 cities in Pune, where we played Bangladesh. And in 3 days, we were playing New Zealand and Dharamshala. Now, can you imagine all that it takes for like a hardcore fan to get from there to there, right? Like,
I covered the 2016 or 2017 series, whenever that was, and they had a test in Ranchi, and 3 days later, a test in Dharamshala. And it was just like, I remember the Australian fans going, can we even get between these two places in that time? And the Ranchi test went 5 days as well. So they didn't even get extra days. So I'm with you, and I've done it before, and it's horrible.
That's right. So I was just like, it's exactly as difficult. And just the way it's tough for the fan to like really get into the stadium because, I mean, demand and supply, you have 60,000 tickets at best or 120. We'll come to that later in Ahmedabad. But even that is not as much as whatever, the supplies are 120,000 tickets. The demand is like 500,000. I mean, to keep the number real, it's impossible, right? So, and it's very similar for a person who's trying to get an accreditation or a match day seat with one of these smaller outlets. So yeah, because I was writing about the fans, it also kind of made sense. It's not like it wasn't by design, but I was like, I'm suffering just like them, man. I may as well write about what I'm going through because
but
it's
also
kind of reflecting what they're going through.
I've written about fans before, and sometimes I think it's better to sit outside of the press box than inside the press box. But the problem is they won't let you bring a laptop in unless you've got an accreditation. So even in your case, you're like, oh, it would be better. But the only way to do it is to go in with like a notepad and your phone and recording stuff. Like you have to be in the press box, not to mention little things that people don't think about, which is if the reason that press get free food is not because they're pampered, it's because I've been to, you and I have probably both covered games where there isn't free food for the press.
Yep.
You don't know when to go. If you line up during the break, everyone in the ground's lining up during the break. So you might miss the start of the game. And if you go during the game, then you're missing the game as well. So it in every way it helps. But the thing is that, especially for World Cups now, it's getting harder and harder just to get a seat in the room, right? And then what you end up doing is like, I've been doing this, as I said, for Bayram recently. You end up having to call in contacts. You end up having to pull favors in for very, very basic things. Like I should obviously be in this press box because of, the audience that I'm covering or the story that I'm covering. And that's not how you get in the press box. It literally is. I've got a friend. I've got a list of contacts here that are all people who do accreditation. Because as you might know, they actually go around the world quite a lot and they do all these different tournaments. So I've never had a phone number from someone who does accreditation in cricket without keeping it in my phone because they might be doing the next tournament. So you need to know all these. And sometimes I have to call like really important people and go, I know this is well beneath you, but I can't get in the press box.
Yeah. Hey, so forget food, right? Like the Pune press box at this World Cup, the media center didn't have a loo. So the Bangladeshi reporters and the Indian reporters had to line up. I've written it in the book. We had to line up with the public
Is that the one out the back? It's like you walk down the stairs and go, yeah, no, I remember that when I was at Pune, right? And you couldn't go to the toilet during the break because everyone was in, Oh my God. I thought they would, because at that stage I was like, well, they haven't built it yet, but they will. But apparently, no.
Eventually, they haven't. So by the time
the Wacker used to have,
break,
the Wacker used to have one toilet, and like the whole press box would run for it at every break.
Yeah. But imagine queuing up with like 16,000 fans in like one bay or whatever, right? Like, because we all end up going during the drinks break, some to the concession stands, but most of us to like the loo to pee. And by the time we're out, like 5 overs have passed. So yeah.
No, it's mad. The whole thing's mad. There's a couple of great stories in this. One is about MS Dhoni and his super fan and a young girl. I might mispronounce this. I don't think I've seen this name before, but is it Dia?
Yeah, that's his daughter's name. That's right.
So take us through that.
Oh yeah, so that's the thing, right? While wanting to write about this country, I thought it'll be fantastic or I'll strike gold if I meet people who are in the periphery of cricket. I don't mean like normal fans. I mean people like ex-players who didn't play too many games, or people who call themselves super fans. Periphery of cricket was important to me because they can't do without cricket, but cricket can very well do without them, right? They like this machinery will move on, but they tell me the story of their passion, which is representative of fans all around, and they also tell me the story of the land they're from. I mean, they kind of like serve this dual role. And in Chennai, where India's first match was against Australia, I was lucky enough to meet this Dhoni super fan, this CSK fan, right?
Is he the guy that dresses up as Dhoni at the grounds? Is it that guy?
Yes. No, so he's got Dhoni's name written on him, but he basically paints himself from head to toe in yellow. He's got
that guy,
ample belly, and he like very meticulously gets like the title sponsor of CSK painted on him on match day. It takes about 7 hours or something like that, right? And he looks like a yesteryear matinee star from Tamil Nadu, from Chennai, and very representative of this state's love for celebrities. Because what happens with Rajinikanth, who's like the big star over here, right? Like they literally pour like liters and liters of milk on like his cardboard cutouts on the day his movie is released, and that's just like skimming the surface. Anyway, so I meet this guy, and I immediately get a sense of his fanaticism, and it's very hard not to judge, but you can't. So he tells me many wonderful stories, but the greatest of them all is he goes like, so the day my daughter was born, I messaged Dhoni's manager saying, my child's been born, and I just want, please convey this message to Dhoni. And the manager ends up telling him that, hey, you know what, this is crazy, but Dhoni's actually here in Chennai. It was just like an exchange of messages, nothing more. This guy abandons his wife, who's just given birth to his 2-hour-old child, and runs to the hotel in which Dhoni is residing in, gets Dhoni out, and goes like, my daughter is born, I need your blessings. And Dhoni's like, no, can you please just go back to the maternity ward? Like, what the hell? And he goes like, I refuse to do this because you're my God, and prostrates in front of him, holds his feet and says, I will not leave till you give me a name. And he also puts a condition on this. He goes like, the name has to start with D because your name starts with D. And Dhoni on the spot thinks of something, tells him Dia, and then he goes like, thank you, and then he leaves, right? So it's just, I mean, yeah, where else do you get such stories, Jared?
So I don't have a story that good, and it's a ridiculous story, that one. I really enjoyed it, but it reminded me of during the 2015 World Cup. You're traveling around in the World Cup, and in front of me is Rod Marsh, right?
Yeah.
And I think he'd just shaved his mustache. So he didn't look like Rod Marsh. And also, Rod Marsh, probably not a particularly famous cricketer in India. Didn't play all that much over there or anything. The plane stops, And like, there's a bunch of Indians at the back of the plane, and in business class, it's boycott, right? And the plane stops, and there's like this 42-year-old dad, right? Indian super fan, Indian shirt on and everything. The plane stopped, takes his seatbelt off, and just runs up. Now, Rod Marsh, surprisingly spry, gets up almost as quickly and starts to get his bag down and everything. And this guy's trying to get through. And Rod Marsh realizes what's happening. And I don't know if you ever came across Rod, but he's the sort of person that would go out of his way to be difficult to this sort of a person, right? And also, this guy is being rude. He's pushing and shoving and whatever. And Rod's going, look, you can catch up with him when we get off the flight. Just chill, right? I don't think Rod Marsh ever used the word just chill, but kind of said it. He probably said, settle the fuck down, mate. But I can't remember the full words. And this guy climbs over the chairs and over Rod Marsh's shoulder. And I honestly thought Rod Marsh was going to fucking punch him, but I don't think he could reach him because the guy was like on his shoulder and went past. And you're just like, it's not a normal level of fandom, is it? Like, who has ever wanted to meet Jeffrey Boycott that much? Like when you read the story about, Dia's dad, and you just like, and then you look at him, and I've seen him in the ground with the big belly and the yellow and everything. And I'm like, to me, that's extreme. And then you're like, well, of course he would be that extreme in every facet of his life. Right. And that is, it's a big part of what Indian fandom is. Like, you and I would have 1,000 stories of, I remember coming out of Lords once and trying to get in a taxi. Coming out of Lords with Raul Dravid because we recorded together, and I was walking to the tube and he was getting in a car, and there was like 8 fans there, and I thought, oh great, they're not going to hassle him too much. And then they just start to get in his car with him, and that ad where Raul Dravid gets really angry in the road rage. I saw that happen in real life. As I thought Raul Dravid was going to kick this dude out of onto the road. Rightly, again, completely rightly, but it's just not something that you see in other situations, is it? It really, and it has to be lived to be believed. Like, if you're in an airport and the Indian team come into the airport, the whole airport shuts down, and you can hear the chants and all sorts of things. It really is a completely different world.
But it's very symptomatic of our society, right? I mean, it's just it derives from the fact that we have so many people. So even as fans, we're just constantly trying to stand out, because at the end of the day, I mean, like, we're just like 60,000 faceless, nameless people in a stadium. How do I get the camera pointed towards me? How do I get the players to know that I like you more than the guy sitting next to me likes you? Right. So it's obviously like because of this. And I know it's like a larger talking point and a real disease these days, which is, like the fan wars online. That's what it's kind of like gravitated towards. There's a big reason why these people like identify as Rohit fans or Virat fans, or when India lost the 2023 World Cup, you saw all these Virat fans going like, of course, this is going to happen when you have Rohit as captain. And these, I mean, like this all kind of like, just stems from the same place, which is how do we stand out? How do we not remain faceless, right? Like I can abuse you, I can troll you, but after a while you're immune to it. So I got to do something else. Like I got to show you that I really love you in the greatest way possible. So yeah, very, very symptomatic, emblematic of society in India at large.
And it's worth noting it's not about cricket, because you also covered 10,000 fans turning up to SRK, Shah Rukh Khan, his birthday at his house, which is one of the more... sometimes you read a book like this and you're just like, oh, I would love to do that. Like, I've done some cool stuff when touring. It has never occurred to me to hang out at the front of SRK's house and talk to the people there. That's a genius idea as a writer. And then it's more than probably even when you were first told about it, you were like, this would be interesting. It's a lot more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Because, and also it kind of fell on my lap, Jared, because the India-Sri Lanka game was the next day, on the day of his birthday. And we've all seen, at least here in India, we've seen visuals of what that extremely maniacal, birthday celebrations look like, where he comes to the terrace and he waves at people. We've seen it all, like in 2 dimensions on like screens and stuff like that, right? But like, you really get to know what that fandom looks like for
Mm.
one human being who's constantly portraying other characters. I mean, you have to be there to believe it. And you and I are sports reporters, cricket reporters, right? We've seen fandom. I mean, a lot of this
Mm.
podcast has been about talking about Indian cricket fandom. It pales in comparison when you realize that there are 15, 20,000 people just standing outside one man's house
Mm.
to wave at him and make him feel good on his birthday. And just imagine, just put yourself, if possible, in like Shah Rukh Khan's shoes, right? Like he's turning a year older, which with respect to like Indian cinema and like heroes and stars, the older you get, the probability of you getting like the bigger movies like
Mm.
dwindle quite rapidly. And here's a man who's about hit 60. I think he was 58 in the book in 2023, where he's just got like, seemingly half of Bombay standing outside his house and like screaming at him, right? And there's a guy who does like lover boy roles and like action roles and stuff like that. Like, what has he really done for society apart from, I don't know, being Shah Rukh Khan, right? But I'm also obsessed with the idea, the concept of Shah Rukh Khan, because the greatest character he's ever played is, not the guy from Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge, or Rahul, as the name he often, his character name that he often plays in movies. The greatest character he's ever played is Shah Rukh Khan, right?
Mm.
Like that's the act he has to put on every day in front of these screaming masses, and he obliges. And how, man? And it's fantastic to see it at like very, very, very close proximity.
Well, you were obviously one of the people waving at him at that point.
Yeah, I was one of those people like screaming and watching people cry, and I felt it too. I won't lie.
One of the interesting things, and you mentioned at the start that that India is multitudes of countries within one, right? And both of us have toured around enough to understand this, but people from outside
Yeah.
of India don't really understand that. One of the best places to go to understand that is Dharamshala, right? Which is a completely different world. I remember arriving there and the Australian team eating. You'll know the name of the place, but there's like a big pub on the corner on the overlooking the town.
McLeod's, that's what it's called.
What's it called?
McLeod's, because the place is McLeod Gun, but I know exactly the bar you're talking about.
Yep,
Yeah.
that bar there, and like the Australian team
You,
are in there.
KK, and I, KK being Karthik Krishnaswamy, the three of us had a drink on that very tour in 2017.
So
Yeah.
that
Anyway,
bar,
please carry on.
no, I was going to say, yeah, of course, I forgot that, but I remember being there when the Australian team came through, and like they just didn't get hassled. And another day when the Australian team were walking around and they didn't get hassled, and then the Indian team came in to have they had like a private room at the back. But again, it was quite casual. And I've been in other places in India where the Indian teams turn up and it's like, that's the end of the world. Like, we'll need.
Yeah.
Dharamshala is so different to the rest of India. And I don't know if everyone really understands just how different it is.
Yeah, I mean, so it's also in the lap of the Himalayas, just in the like below the Dauladar range, and the place was where the Dalai Lama moved with about 5,000 refugees when Lhasa was overrun by the Chinese in 1960. So it also became like a spiritual place with quieter Indians in the Himachalis or people from the hills living around there. And, the infrastructure is not great. This is like crazy terrain and like a real like mountain area where people from the plains don't often visit. And then Anurag Thakur, who was born to the chief minister of Himachal Pradesh, kind of starts funneling a crazy amount of cricket there from the turn of the century, including the 2016 T20 World Cup. But I don't think India played too many matches over there. But now comes 2023, and they've allotted a match to like many different centers, and they did not give one to Mohali, which is an institution which kind of hosted the semi-final of the two previous 50 over World Cups that India was a part of with two other countries. Um, and it did the semi-final, right? And this time it got nothing at all because of the political situation in this country. And Anurag Thakur is very much part of the political establishment. So with Mohali, which is just on the plains below the hills, not having a cricket match, and Dharamshala getting an India match, ensured like the entire plains of Punjab kind of like drained out and tried to drive up the hills and completely tested the infrastructure there, right? Like, because there's nothing, it's just one road. You can't build flyovers there. I mean, it's steep, it gets to like 70 degrees at points. So these guys with their big sedans and SUVs and the honking madness, like all of them with like stalled vehicles and burnt clutch plates, like choking up the place. There was like an 8-hour jam for like a road that should take like 5 minutes, all because Anurag Thakur wanted to like get cricket, like the big match over there, like the flagship match over there. And it's crazy because Himachal Pradesh, we haven't had any cricketers from there, like literally one who I speak to in the book too, in Rishi Dhawan.
That's not true. Anurag Thakur actually played first class cricket so that he could, in case they ever brought in a ruling that says non-cricketers couldn't run cricket, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So there's cricketer Anurag Thakur and there's also cricketer Rishi Dhawan who actually went on to play for India. He played 2 games. But can you imagine a state that's had so much focus on it with the development of the HPCA stadium and all the resources that are kind of being like shoved that way? They've produced one guy, right? And yet now it's become like one of the major cricketing venues. And yes, that fantastic Dauladar in the background makes it a good venue to watch cricket in, but it doesn't have the infrastructure to get all those manic Indian fans to there and back over and over again. And yet, every time Australia come touring or England come touring, you have a test match there, right? So
it's become the sort of thing that it's so popular now for that area, isn't it? Like so many Australian and English fans, and especially English fans who are most likely to travel, they want to go there, and it's a magical place. Forget the cricket; it just is a magical place. If you know that tour that you're talking about. When I was there, we went up to the top
Trion.
of the mountain, up to the Trion, and also with all the monks and everything in the center of town, and it's a ridiculous place. So I can understand that. That's like one of the less colonial places because of the monks and the immigration and everything. I want to get to one of the most colonial places that you talk about in the book, which is Koshy's, which is what would you call it? I think it's called a cafe. It's probably more of a pub, it's not far from Chinnaswamy. I'm pretty sure I've walked there from Chinnaswamy, but it's what, half an hour walk, 20 minutes? Yeah. So it's not that far.
2 minutes
Is it closer? I might have come out of the wrong gate, but it's around there. I know it's in that area.
Yeah. Or it might have taken you a while to cross the road, like to cross MG Road. But that's the only road that divides Koshy's from Chinnaswamy.
That's true.
But it takes a while to cross.
Why did you write about Koshy's? I know that in cricket writing, it's kind of, would I say famous? It's if you're an overseas journalist, you're told you have to go to Koshy's.
Yeah. It's very simple. I absolutely love the place, and I just wanted any excuse to start putting in places that I kind of wanted the readers to go to around India, like Gokul's, the pub in Kolaba in Bombay, right? Like, I don't think anyone really cares about it, or if they do, it's a cult thing amongst like college students in Bombay to have like cheap beer and alcohol. And
I think I've been there.
You've been to I'm sure you've been to Gokul's, man. 100%.
Boy, I'm just looking up. I have been there. The minute you said it, I was like, wait a minute. How is it possible I've been there? I have been there. That was awesome, that place. Is it the place with the really tight ceilings? Like it's kind of packed in?
Yes. With a lot of like wooden benches and there's one AC room, which is the special room.
Yeah.
Where you can barely breathe. It's like the Delhi smog in there, right? Because like people are like
everyone's smoking
away.
Yeah.
I've seen an English cricketer or two in there being a bit silly.
And what's the famous one in on Shakespeare Street in Kolkata? No, it's not Shakespeare Street. But what's the one in Kolkata that
on Park Street? It's called Ollie Pub.
Ollie Pub, yeah. Sorry, we're just going through. everyone who's not a cricket writer at this stage is just like, just stop talking about random pubs in different cities. But Ollie Pub is the
They're
other one.
not so random. So that's the thing. So Olipub, Gokuls, Koshis, these places are like institutions, not just for cricket writers and guys like you who are lucky enough to be around here and like, be recommended to go to these places. I also wanted to write about like what they kind of mean to the person on the street, what they mean to the person in that city, and whether they respect a place with like such a strong whiff of like a colonial hangover in there. They're very proud of the fact that they once served Queen Elizabeth II, and the kind of stuff that even the Brits aren't proud of. But I like that.
It's this. They still wear the old colonial uniforms. The waiters, don't they?
The safari suits, the white safari suits.
And like, I haven't been there I can't remember the last time I was in Bangalore. It'd probably be 2018, 2019 last time I was there. But people were, but all the waiters are like, not only are they wearing old clothes, they are all like old dudes who come around. And it's like, it really does feel like you have, like I've been to the Mumbai Maidan. No, not Mumbai Maidan, the Mumbai Gymkhana. Right. And I was like, this is the most colonial place I've been to. And then I went to Koshy's and I was like, okay, this is the most colonial place I've been. And I live in England, dude. I can go to old English stuff. You wouldn't, as you said, you wouldn't get those sorts of things in England anymore because they'd be like, oh, that's too much.
Yeah, exactly. And you really, it's like a time portal, right? Like you feel like the rest of the city kind of became this idea of modern India, and left like these little time capsules behind. Olipub in Calcutta being one of them, but Koshi's most definitely so. There's something strangely beautiful about it, and that cantonment area of Bangalore, which kind of retains some of the old school charm. Like people like reading books around there. One bookshop got famous on Church Street, so they franchised out into 3 more on the same street, right? Like, where I mean, we're talking about books, Jared, in India, and like there's just like this flourishing business of people selling and buying books in brick and mortar places, not off the streets.
Oh, I like the street sellers as well. There's another one in Kolkata, which is this huge cafe. I think it's over 2 floors. I think it might have even been KK who told me to go. I can't remember. Or Monga. One of them told me to go. And again, it's like this famous place where everyone goes, and everyone had a book and like their tiny little coffee. It's interesting to me that you have so many of these kinds of places that in a city where you might have 20 or 30 million people, coming through that city, but you have these places who end up being like the most important in that area. Like if you come to London, the most important places in London are generally, once they get really important, are taken over by tourists, right? And the same in Melbourne, the same in Sydney, the same in Cape Town, right? So as a tourist, they're fun to go to, but these aren't really touristy places, right? Like Koshy's is who's the famous writer who's always hanging out in Koshy's?
Ramchandra Guha.
Of course. I was trying to remember his name and I was like, I know it's one of the big guys. I was trying to remember who it was. Like, this isn't a place that gets taken over by tourists. They're like real living establishments.
Like locals, man, the natives. I mean, they literally pop in there for a lunch and a beer and head out exactly the way it would be in a London or a Cape Town or a Melbourne, right? So, a place like this would have been taken over by the tourists in a London or a Cape Town or a Melbourne. But this is like one of your local pubs down the road, which just happened to become an institution, and it just remained a place for only the locals to visit. So yeah.
No, it's so random. I can't remember what tour I was on, but one of the times I was in India and we went to Koshy's, and it was like in the corner was obviously these old men who'd been in an argument for the last 15 years on the same topic, right? And then a bunch of like German tourists or something came in behind us, like a family. And you're just like, this is so bizarre, because it's just like, that sort of thing doesn't happen in, Colombo or, or Barbados or whatever. It's so random when you see stuff like that. Final question, really. you're following the team. You're not really writing about the team, certainly not from a book perspective. I'm sure you wrote some articles about them. You've got to justify it to your bosses at a certain point. But you're writing about the fans. I was running this network at the time during that World Cup, and we had a huge World Cup, right? And then India lost, and all the numbers went down. Not only that, it's the only time ever that we lost subscribers, right?
Oh,
and it was on both channels, so the live channel and the normal channel. Both went to at first we thought it was an algorithm glitch because they're like, that can't be, and then we just realized so many people were so upset that India had lost. You're covering the fans. How is this for you?
Yeah, but again, it also allowed me to see, because of just how great that campaign was all the way right on until the end, right? Like it allowed me. Of course, I saw like the craze and the passion, and the absolute love for the game, while this team was just like trouncing oppositions for fun. But it also allowed me to see, and a lot of Indians to see, what it's like after we lose, and after we lose at such a crucial stage. Because in Ahmedabad, which was notorious right through the World Cup, I mean, in the India-Pakistan game, they wouldn't applaud for the Pakistanis. And it got weird because, as Mickey Arthur said, it almost felt like a bilateral game with no Dil Dil Pakistan coming off the speakers. It was very strange. But at a time when you need fan support, the one time you need, like, Virat Kohli is always egging people on. There's a reason why, like, players like the fans right, behind their backs, right? When we needed them the most, when Travis Head was going for it, but it was still a little dicey, at 40 for 3 or whatever, fans started leaving once they realized that India wasn't going to win this game, right? And we started watching it from the press box, and we started noticing, like, vast swathes, like, just clearing out. And again, it tells you a lot about fandom, cricket fandom in this country. And it's something that, I'm not glad that India lost that World Cup. I really thought that was a team that deserved to win it. I mean, it's possibly the best team to not win a particular edition. Better than South Africa '99, better than Brazil 1998. Going cross sport, we were better than all of that. The way we played the first 10 games, but the loss, at least as a writer, it showed me the other side of the fans, and that's important too, at least to witness it.
So the headline from this podcast is Aditya happy India lost for extra writing material. That's what I'm seeing here.
I think people might start, like, sending the book back to the publishing house.
It's interesting though, because it should have been a great story, India losing, but because everyone turned away, it's a hard, like, if you write this exact same book and India's won, you're probably selling double to triple the amount of books. But as a writer, this is a better story, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's Shakespeare, and no, like a tragic ending is always great to read and write, I suppose, or witness. But no, that's not how it works, I suppose. Had India won, yes. But again, I mean, like, I would have just seen fans in the same uniform, in the same cloth that they wore, like, from the beginning to the end, which is happiness.
Yes.
This cloak of despairing, like, just like outright heart clenching is also what we got to see because of this. But like I said, your podcast, or sorry, your show, just lost people. Sure, they would literally start sending the book back if that's your headline for this show.
Yeah, which is what I'm going to do to see how many of your books we can get pulped in this. Thank you very much. And just to remind everyone, the name of the book is?
It's Gully travels around India during the 2023 World Cup, but you can just search for Gully on Amazon and in brick and mortar stores. It's available everywhere.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
My God, thank you so much, Jared. It means a lot. Thank you.
It took God and the demon to build international cricket, but don't tell Johnny Best that. 1882, Australia had played one test in England against the god W.G. Grace, and they sucked. So they were playing him again, and it was a tough wicket. But England was in front, so Australia was desperate for a third innings lead. At number 8 was young all-rounder Sammy Jones. After a routine single, he walks down to do some gardening on the pitch. Grace whips off the bails and appeals. The ball wasn't dead, Jones was run out. The Australians were furious. In fact, some of the English players were also furious. But what Grace said went, and the umpires had already given it. Next in was Fred Spofforth. He was known as the demon fast bowler. He was furious, and he let England know exactly what was coming next, which was maiden. There's 12 maidens. I can't count them all. England only needed 85 to win. W.G. Grace made 32. England only 77. That was the test where the Ashes began. Buy my book, Overthrowing Cricket's Empire, on Amazon today.